What if the most powerful creature in the world started out as nothing more than a mosquito? And what if the only person who knew that was the one everyone had already written off as a failure? That is exactly where the story begins. At the moment the world decided Lei Yi was finished, the Tamer awakening ceremony was the single most important day of any young tamer's life. The S-rank tamed beast stood waiting on the summoning platform, bathed in golden light. The crimson flame golden tiger, a creature of fire and fury, a beast that could reshape battlefields. The azure water divine turtle, ancient, armored, a living fortress with near limitless endurance. Either one of them would have made Lei Yi a legend before he even graduated. The entire plaza held its breath as he stepped forward. Then he walked past both of them. He kept walking until he stopped in front of a small, trembling, barely visible creature at the far end of the platform. A blood-craving demon mage, rank E, the lowest classification a tamed beast could receive. In plain terms, a mosquito. The silence that followed was the kind that precedes an eruption. Then it erupted. The principal's face cycled through stunned, confused, and furious in about 3 seconds flat. Lei's classmates stared as if they were watching someone jump off a bridge. They waved cheerfully on the way down, but Lei Yi had already made his choice, and he had made it with complete, calculated clarity. Because just moments before the ceremony, something extraordinary had happened to him. A system had awakened inside his mind, the talent appraisal system. It gave him something no one else in the plaza possessed, the ability to see a tamed beast's full evolution path, not just its current rank, its ceiling, its potential, its absolute maximum. And what he saw when he looked at those two magnificent S-rank beasts stopped him cold. The crimson flame golden tiger, radiant and terrifying, ceiling, sacred rank. The azure water divine turtle, ancient and immovable, ceiling, sacred rank. Sacred rank tamers were national pillars, elevated beyond almost everyone alive. But they were still a ceiling, still a wall, still a limit. Then he looked at the blood-craving demon mage, the mosquito everyone else dismissed without a second glance. Its evolution ceiling was listed as unlimited. No cap, no boundary, no rank it could not eventually surpass. The system showed him something more, the mechanism behind that unlimited growth. The blood-craving demon mage evolved through blood absorption. Every high-tier demon beast it fed upon could yield new talent skills, which it would then share back to its tamer. The higher the beast it consumed, the faster it evolved, and the stronger both it and Lei Yi would become. Sacred rank tamers existed in small numbers across the continent. Divine rank tamers existed only in ancient records, whispered about like myths. But with this mosquito, Lei Yi was looking at a path that led beyond even those legends. There was one more consideration that sealed his decision completely. High-rank tamed beasts devoured resources, nutrient solutions, crystal cores, faction support, political favors. Contract an S-rank beast and every powerful organization in the country immediately wants a piece of you. Refuse to cooperate, and your supply chain disappears overnight. Your powerful beast starves while your enemies circle. The blood-craving demon mage needed none of that. It fed on blood from demon beasts it encountered naturally in the wild. It drew no attention from major factions, triggered no political interest, invited no powerful enemies. It would let Lei Yi grow in total silence, beneath everyone's radar, completely on his own terms. He stepped forward and completed the contract without hesitation. The light faded. The bond was sealed. The screen beside him lit up with the result. Blood-craving demon mage, level E tamed beast. The plaza went absolutely silent for 3 full seconds. Then it collapsed into disbelief. The S-rank tamed beast, right there, free for the taking, and he chose a mosquito. The principal could no longer stay composed. He stormed across the platform and roared directly into Lei Yi's face. He demanded to know if water had gotten into Lei's brain, or if a donkey had kicked him in the skull. Lei Yi shrugged and said simply that he had chosen the beast that suited him. His family was poor, he explained. They could never afford to raise an S-rank beast. The principal nearly came apart at the seams at that response. He fired back that scholarship funding, state subsidies, and clan sponsorships would have solved every resource problem instantly. Lei Yi offered no further explanation. The principal declared that from that moment forward, not a single scholarship from Haichen High School had anything to do with Lei Yi. The school would not invest a single resource in someone who had voluntarily made himself worthless. The students around him pulled back as if association itself might be contagious. A few felt genuine sympathy, Most felt something closer to relief. Geniuses falling made ordinary people feel safer about their own mediocrity. The whispers spread fast. Must have been the breakup, they said. That girl leaving him must have shattered something inside. Lu Yan heard all of it and felt nothing but satisfaction. She had ended things with Lei Yi recently, and the last thing she wanted was to watch him succeed without her. She pressed herself against Han Chen's arm and told him this proved she had made the right call. Han Chen laughed and said he had always known choosing her was correct, that he must have been blind to ever notice Lei Yi at all. The two of them celebrated while the rest of the student body treated Lei Yi like a cautionary tale. Nobody wanted to be seen near someone who had just declared war on their own future. Nobody wanted to risk drawing Han Chen's attention by standing too close. Lei Yi walked away from all of it without a word. He had expected exactly this reaction, and it was working in his favor already. The more completely everyone dismissed him, the more room he had to grow without interference. He needed to move fast, keep his head down, and develop his strength before anyone realized what he was actually building. But the immediate problem was brutally practical. He was broke. The blood-craving demon Meads needed to feed on high-tier demon beast blood to evolve quickly. Ordinary blood offered almost nothing in the way of progress. He couldn't buy demon beast blood. He couldn't afford entry into training grounds. Hunting in the wild alone at his current strength was essentially a death sentence. Joining a team required credentials and connections he did not have. He was standing at the foot of a mountain with no gear and no map. But before he had taken 10 steps out of the plaza, someone called his name. He looked up and found Lin Qingshu standing in his path. She wore a white dress, her expression distant and perfectly composed, ice cold in a way that kept everyone at a careful distance. She was widely considered the most striking person at Haichen High School, a title that put her well above Lu Yan in the estimation of almost every student. She had spent the last several years competing against Lei Yi academically, pushing herself relentlessly to surpass him, and had consistently landed in second place. She looked at him now with an expression that was neither pity nor mockery. She simply wanted to know, was this a rational decision, or had the breakup genuinely broken him? Lei Yi smiled and asked if she would believe him if he told her it was carefully calculated. Lin Qingshu studied him for a long moment. She knew his personality well enough to know he did not make irrational choices. But even so, she could not understand how a mosquito led anywhere but the bottom. She told him that even without resources, an S-rank beast had a higher ceiling than any mosquito could ever reach. Lei Yi told her simply that one day she would understand choosing the mosquito was the best decision he had ever made. He could not explain the system. His life depended on keeping that secret. Lin Qingshu accepted the non-answer with a slight nod. As long as it was not a breakdown, that was enough for her. She turned to leave, and then Lei Yi had a thought. He had heard she had contracted in a ranked three-tailed fox ahead of the ceremony. Her clan had arranged it specifically. He asked if he could take a look at it. Lin Qingshu found the request puzzling, but she summoned the three-tailed fox without hesitation. It was everything she had been promised, an exceptional creature, sitting at the top of her rank, silver-furred and sharp-eyed. Lei Yi reached out and pretended to examine it, running his fingers through its fur with an expression of polite curiosity. The mosquito, invisible and silent, slipped in behind the three-tailed fox and began to feed. The three-tailed fox noticed absolutely nothing. Lei Yi watched the information cascade through his system as the mosquito worked. Three-tailed fox, level 7, a rank, skills, allure, wind blade, fireball, divine beast bloodline, nine-tailed fox, bloodline purity, 5%, evolvable to divine rank. Even mentally prepared as he was, Lei Yi barely managed to keep his expression neutral. The evolution ceiling on this creature was extraordinary, nearly rivaling his own mosquito. The system laid out the path clearly: sustained absorption of water element crystal cores, or contact with refined divine beast bloodline carriers of the same element. After tails, it would reach peak rank. At maximum evolution, it would become a divine rank nine-tailed fox. That was the kind of tame beast that changed the balance of power between nations. And Lin Qingshu had no idea any of it was possible. Lei Yi began calculating before the mosquito had even finished feeding. He needed to keep the three-tailed fox growing. The faster it evolved, the more skills the mosquito could absorb from it, and the faster he would grow in turn. Their interests were perfectly aligned. He just needed her to believe in the possibility without knowing the source of his information. He put on a thoughtful expression and told her he had once come across something in an old book about the nine-tailed fox bloodline. He told her that if a three-tailed fox already carried that divine beast lineage, there was a genuine path to evolving it all the way to its maximum form. And from what he could observe using his mosquito's blood sensitivity, hers very likely met the conditions. Lin Qingshu's composure cracked for just a moment. Her eyes went wide. She asked if he was serious. He told her he never made claims like this carelessly. She absorbed this, and then something shifted in her gaze. She was beginning to understand why he had chosen the mosquito. A tame beast that could detect divine beast bloodlines just through proximity was already a remarkable tool. She trusted his judgment. She always had, even when she refused to admit it. She asked him for the 2 evolution methods immediately. Lei Yi laid them out with careful precision, knowing full well that every word he spoke was fabricated justification for what the system had actually shown him. The first method, sustained feeding of water element crystal cores, high-tier ones, matched by element and category. The second method, locating a demon beast that carried water attribute divine beast bloodline, purifying it to sufficient concentration and having the fox absorb it directly. Lin Qingshu heard both options and nearly crumbled on the spot, even with her clan's deep resources. This kind of investment was on the edge of what they could sustain, without absolute certainty of success. High-tier crystal cores were expensive beyond most people's imagining. Divine beast bloodlines were rarer still. But Lin Qingshu was not the kind of person who gave up when the path was difficult. She steadied herself quickly, her expression returning to its usual cool certainty. She told him she understood, that she would work toward it, and once she had real evidence of progress she would bring the clan fully on board. Then she asked about the book. Could he show it to her? Lei Yi managed what he privately thought was his most convincing performance of the day. He told her with genuine-looking regret that he had seen it years ago at an antique stall, and had no idea how to find it again. Lin Qingshu accepted the loss of that resource with a nod. Then she said something that stopped him completely. She told him his mosquito was leveling far too slowly on its own. She asked if he wanted to come hunt demon beasts with her. The silence that followed was one that anyone watching from outside would have found difficult to interpret. Lin Qingshu, the untouchable goddess of Haichen High School, had just voluntarily invited a boy to partner with her on a mission. Every male student within earshot would have traded their best tame beast for that offer. Lei Yi thought it over for approximately 3 seconds and said yes. He was not sentimental about it. Going out with Lin Qingshu meant safety, firepower, at feeding opportunities he could not manufacture alone. They agreed on the next morning and went their separate ways. Lei Yi went back to the dormitory at top speed and pulled up the mosquito's status screen. Blood-craving demon mage, level 1, talent E-rank, skills, prey detection, paralysis. Prey detection allowed it to locate any blood-carrying life form within 100 meters. Paralysis allowed it to inject anesthetic during feeding, making the prey completely unaware of the process. That explained everything. How it had fed on an E-rank 3-tailed fox without being detected for a single second. He set it to finish absorbing the fox's blood and waited. He expected the process to take hours. It was done in just over 30 minutes. The mosquito had visibly grown, new markings tracing across its body, a faint aura emanating from it that had not been there before. He pulled up the updated attribute panel and read it twice to make sure he was seeing it correctly. Level 2, talent D-rank, 1 full rank higher than before. Skills, paralysis, prey detection, basic bewilderment, basic fireball, basic wind blade. Divine beast bloodline, 9-tailed fox bloodline, purity to 0.6%. 3 attribute feedback entries available. Activate now. A single feeding session, 1 E-rank beast, and the result was this. He activated the feedback without waiting another breath. Energy surged through his body in a wave, not gradual, not subtle, but immediate and total. He checked his own skill panel. New entries had appeared. Basic wind control, basic fire control. He was beginning to understand the system's deeper logic. The feedback skills mirrored what the mosquito had absorbed, growing alongside it as it evolved. And the divine beast bloodline meant the mosquito was now carrying something extraordinary inside its own body. There was one more implication that made his pulse spike. Most tamers kept their bodies soft. Cultivation focused entirely on the tame beast, not the tamer's physical form. But Lei Yi now had combat skills, real ones, active ones, usable in a fight. His effective combat power had doubled in a single evening, and no one would ever see it coming. An opponent facing him would look directly at the mosquito and see nothing threatening. They would never watch his hands. He was still processing all of this when the dormitory door was kicked open. 3 students stormed in, and the hostility radiating off them was immediate and physical. Lei Yi recognized them without effort. Han Chen's personal errand runners, here to collect a favor by making his night worse. They told him loudly that they were there to show him what happened to people who embarrassed young Master Han in public. What they did not realize was that they had brought their contract to tame beasts with them to make a point, and that was going to cost them everything. Lei Yi sat up slowly, kept their attention on his face, and sent the mosquito circling behind them without a word. While the 3 of them talked, and they talked quite a lot, the mosquito moved from beast to beast, drawing blood from each one in complete silence. They were still mid-monologue about how useless he was, when the mosquito had already finished feeding on the first beast. The horned turtle's blood came through fast. The mosquito processed it, and a new skill entered its pool, Turtle Shell Defense. Lei Yi activated the feedback. A surge of defensive energy flooded through his body. His skin felt denser. His stance felt grounded in a way it had not been 30 seconds earlier. He could withstand a significant hit now. The math on this fight had just shifted considerably in his favor. When they finally stopped threatening him and demanded he summon his beast, he told them calmly that he would fight, but they were doing it on the roof. No witnesses, no school report. Those were his conditions. All 3 of them burst out laughing. A private fight meant they could be as brutal as they wanted. They agreed immediately, certain they were walking toward an easy victory. On the way up to the rooftop, the mosquito finished absorbing the remaining beast's blood entirely. Vitality increased by 13%. A new skill appeared, Sprint, doubling movement speed for a short burst. By the time they reached the roof, Lei Yi was no longer the same person who had left the dormitory floor. They summoned their beasts and ordered them to kill the mosquito first. Destroy the tamed beast. Destroy the tamer's future permanently. The gray wolf lunged at Lei Yi. He raised his left arm across his chest and let it bite down. The wolf's jaws closed on his forearm and met something that felt like clamping onto an iron pipe. Its teeth went numb. It looked genuinely confused. This thing it had bitten was supposed to be a person. Lei Yi raised his right fist and drove it into the wolf's skull with everything he had. One punch, the wolf dropped, unconscious. All 3 of them stood paralyzed. They had never seen a tamer fight like this in their lives. Lei Yi did not give them time to recover. He moved while they were still processing. 1 punch each. 3 students hit the ground. Their beasts, cut off from their tamer's direction, collapsed alongside them. He rolled his wrist and thought privately that this had been genuinely satisfying. Then he ordered the mosquito to keep feeding while the unconscious beasts lay available. He gave them just enough blood drawn to be useful, not enough to cause permanent damage. He needed them functional. They were going to serve as walking blood banks for the weeks ahead. One of them woke up mid-session. Lei Yi put him back to sleep with a second punch and barely broke stride. 2 hours later, the mosquito had reached level 5. The 3 beasts were significantly drained, but still alive. Lei Yi stopped the feeding, walked back to his room at a leisurely pace, and checked the updated status. Level 5, Talent D rank. The mosquito's body was visibly twice the size it had been that morning. Its mouth had hardened and lengthened, taking on a faint metallic sheen, capable now of piercing even thick-skinned targets without resistance. When the 3 of them woke up on the rooftop, confused and humiliated, their immediate conclusion was that Lei Yi must be dual-classed. That was the only explanation. They could fight for a tamer with a body strong enough to absorb a wolf bite and answer it with a single knockout blow. They agreed without a word that this result could never leave the rooftop. Being beaten by someone who had contracted a mosquito was not a story any of them could afford to have circulating. They would recover quietly, get stronger, and come back. Meanwhile, in a closed-door meeting across the school, the principal was smashing teacups. The loss of an S-rank contractor was a catastrophe for Haichen High School's funding projections. Rival schools were already advancing, the annual joint examinations were coming, and the ranking this year looked grim. But then the principal lowered his voice and told the room he had been holding something back. A girl named Binger, direct daughter of the B clan, a lineage of elite ice element tamers, was relocating to Haichen. She had contracted an S-rank beast, an ice phoenix, with a divine beast bloodline purity of 7%. If properly cultivated, it could break the S-rank ceiling entirely and reach sacred rank. The room erupted. Every administrator who had been drowning in pessimism came back to the surface at once. The principal let the celebration last for a moment, then cut it short with a serious tone. Their job was not just to host Binger, it was to protect her, quietly and completely, without drawing attention to the arrangement. Enemies had driven the B clan out of the capital. Binger was a target. Every security measure had to be invisible. The principal folded his hands and let that weight settle over the room. The joint examinations were the least of what was coming. The next morning, Lei Yi was up before sunrise. The previous night had taught him something precise and immediately applicable. Absorbing the same talent skill repeatedly from multiple sources leveled that skill faster. Targeting specific species during hunts, species whose abilities complemented his strategy, was the fastest possible route to becoming dangerous. He made his way to the meeting point and spotted Lin Qingshu from a distance. She wore a light gray athletic outfit that drew second glances from every person who passed her on the path. She paid none of them any attention. She had arrived early. People who recognized them both stopped and stared. Their goddess was walking alongside Lei Yi, the boy who had contracted a mosquito. Murderous admiration radiated from multiple directions. Lei Yi could feel it clearly. His mosquito had sharpened his senses dramatically overnight. Voices he would not have heard before now reached him from 30 meters away. He caught fragments of conversation as they passed. Everyone assumed the breakup had broken him. Everyone was wrong. He quickened his pace and left the whispers behind. Lin Qingshu's three-tailed fox was strong, a ranked talent, 3 attribute types, capable of one-on-one victories against same-tier opponents. She told him to stay behind her if they encountered anything dangerous, and to go first if they were outmatched. Lei Yi summoned the mosquito and swept the surrounding area with prey detection. Within seconds, a clear picture of the terrain formed in his mind. 2 unicorn wild boars, roughly 100 meters to their right, a pack of blue wolves, 300 meters ahead. He relayed the information to Lin Qingshu and watched her expression shift from polite attention to genuine surprise. She had not expected that level of operational intelligence from a mosquito. Most hunting parties wasted hours searching for targets or stumbled into threats they were not ready for. The mosquito eliminated both problems simultaneously by scanning blood scent across hundreds of meters. Lin Qingshu nodded slowly, recalculating her assessment of Lei Yi's tame beast with each new piece of information. They moved toward the unicorn wild boars first. The wolves traveled in packs to large, to safely engage at their current levels. The boars were massive, each weighing 500 to 600 catties, armored with steel bristle hide and heavy tusks. Physically powerful, simple attack patterns, excellent materials from hide to horn to meat, expensive to kill, worth every effort. Lin Qingshu ordered the three-tailed fox to open with a fireball. It hit cleanly and exploded across the boar's flank. The boar squealed, barely scratched, and charged directly at the fox in pure animal fury. Lin Qingshu switched to wind blades without hesitation, 3 of them, angled perfectly to slice through the same wound on impact. The boar dropped, clean, decisive. One combination, no unnecessary damage to the carcass. Lei Yi watched and felt genuine admiration. Seeing a ranked combat power in practice was a different thing from understanding it academically. He sent the mosquito in to feed. It drew deeply, and the vitality counter climbed by 4%. He noted immediately that higher-level blood produced sharply more return than what the level 3 beasts from the dormitory had offered. Out here in the field, the returns would keep scaling upward. This was exactly where he needed to be. They collected both boar carcasses into Lin Qingshu's storage bracelet. 100 cubic meters of capacity, more than enough for whatever they would bring in today. Then the mosquito's detection swept the area ahead and found something better. A swamp lay to their left, populated with rain chime frogs at levels 8 through 10. Water element demon beasts. Exactly what the three-tailed fox needed to accumulate crystal cores toward its next evolution. Lin Qingshu's eyes lit up with a brightness that cracked through her usual composure. They moved quickly toward the swamp, and when they arrived, the scale of the opportunity became clear. The frogs stretched across the swamp in dozens, large, motionless, deceptively inert until prey came within range. Then their mouths opened and water arrows fired with a speed and range that caught most hunters completely off guard. Lin Qingshu ordered the three-tailed fox to engage one isolated frog with wind blades. 3 wind blades swept in. 3 water arrows launched from the frog's throat and intercepted them midair. A clean draw. Then the surrounding frogs turned and began converging. Lei Yi grabbed Lin Qingshu's arm and they ran. There was nothing else to do. Once they were clear of the swamp's range, the frogs gave up the chase and returned to their positions. The two of them stood at a distance, catching their breath, rethinking everything. The three-tailed fox was powerful, but a one-on-one against a rain-chime frog was essentially even, and even meant noise. And noise meant the rest of the swamp joined the fight. Lei Yi had been turning the problem over while they ran, and he already had the answer. The three-tailed fox had the allure skill, a brief charm effect that locked an opponent's attention completely. The mosquito had paralysis, an anesthetic injection that slowed reaction time to almost nothing. Together, those two abilities could chain a frog in place long enough for the wind blades to connect before the water arrows could respond. He laid it out to Lin Qingshu. She absorbed it quickly and agreed without hesitation. The three-tailed fox moved in on an isolated frog and triggered a lure. A pink glow filled the creature's large eyes. The mosquito slipped in from behind and drove its mouth into the frog's skin, flooding it with anesthetic. The three-tailed fox launched 3 simultaneous wind blades. The frog's reflexes were gone. The arrows went wide. The blades landed. The frog dropped, then the next one, then the next. Wave after wave, the strategy held perfectly. The frogs never adapted because they never had time to. Between kills, Lei Yi split each head open with his dagger and sorted through the remains for crystal cores. Every 7th or 8th frog yielded a small soybean-sized water element core, pale blue, dense, pulsing faintly with elemental energy. The moment the three-tailed fox saw the first core, its aristocratic disinterest vanished entirely. It leaped and swallowed it before Lei Yi had even finished holding it out, then threw itself back into the fighting with visible enthusiasm. It no longer needed commands. It understood what the work was for. The mosquito fed continuously in the background, vitality rising with every draw. A new skill entered Lei Yi's feedback pool, water affinity, reducing water attribute damage by half and allowing complete freedom of movement in water. Not a combat skill in the narrow sense, but an advantage that would compound quietly over time. By the time the last frog in the swamp fell, both tame beasts had grown meaningfully. Lin Qingshu was no longer trying to suppress her admiration. It was fully visible on her face. She told him plainly that she finally understood his choice. The mosquito in early stages was already outperforming what a standard S-rank beast would have offered. She made a quiet resolution as they gathered the last of the carcasses. She was going to work harder. She could not afford to fall behind his pace. They moved to a new zone and were still orienting themselves when footsteps came from behind. A group of 7 emerged, older, harder looking, moving with the confidence of people who had done this kind of thing before. The leader looked at the cleared swamp, then at Lei Yi and Lin Qingshu, and his expression hardened. He told them both to hand over every crystal core they had collected, and they would be allowed to leave. Lei Yi measured the situation immediately. Their tame beasts were level 20 and above. Direct confrontation was not the opening move. He kept his voice easy and offered a reasonable explanation, limited storage space, fear of attracting higher-tier predators with the smell of blood. It was a textbook answer, technically sound, the kind of thing students learn from manuals. It did not work. The dark-faced leader dropped the pretense entirely, either hand over the goods, or they would search every storage item by force. And then he looked at Lin Qingshu's clothing, expensive, clearly wealthy, and the equation in his head became even simpler. Lei Yi's patience ended quietly and completely. He announced they were students of Haichen High School and advised them to think carefully. The group laughed. Out in the wild, student status meant nothing. People died out here all the time. The leader told Lin Qingshu if she cooperated, they might let her live. Fury crossed her face like a blade catching light. She told them coldly that they should consider whether they actually had what it took to rob her. The answer was that they thought they did. All 5 beasts summoned simultaneously. Levels hovering around 20. Lei Yi's chest dropped. This was going to be harder than the rooftop. Lin Qingshu stepped close and said quietly that she would hold them off while he ran. He refused immediately. She could not handle all 5 of them alone. He told her that if she trusted him, they could win this. He had a plan. She agreed without asking for details. That alone said something about how much ground they had covered since that morning. The plan was straightforward. She would appear to be losing, appearing to fight alone. He would circle behind the group and use the mosquito to anesthetize and destabilize their tame beasts one at a time. Lin Qingshu summoned her full firepower, wind blades and fireballs launching in overlapping waves. The three-tailed fox's output was ferocious. For a moment, it actually suppressed 5 opponents simultaneously. Then she began retreating visibly, shouting for Lei Yi to run and get help. He turned and sprinted, and every eye in the group followed him, convinced he was fleeing in panic. He was not fleeing. He was positioning. The leader turned his python on Lin Qingshu with full force, certain she would fold under the pressure. She did not fold. She kept moving, kept attacking, kept the three-tailed fox cycling between fireball and wind blade so fast they could not find an opening. Two opponents with stronger tame beasts should have overwhelmed her in under a minute. It had been 5, and she was still standing. The group was becoming anxious. A fight this loud drew attention. They needed this over. They ordered full attack and stopped holding back. That was the moment Lei Yi came around behind all 5 of them. He confirmed none of them were watching, gave the mosquito its order, and watched it streak toward the nearest target. The man felt something graze the back of his neck and turned his head. The mosquito was already driving in. Anesthetic flooded his system. His limbs locked. His voice disappeared. He stood perfectly upright and completely helpless. Lei Yi hit him in the face and moved on to the next before the body had finished falling. A second man responded faster than expected, and summoned a B-rank lizard, armor-plated, teeth half out of its jaw. Lei Yi did not dodge. He drove a kick directly into the lizard's jaw with everything behind it. The lizard tumbled sideways. The man stared as if the laws of physics had personally betrayed him. A tamer should not be able to do that. A tamer was not supposed to have 200 or 300 caddies behind a single kick. Lei Yi closed the distance and punched him flat before he could process the contradiction. The remaining 3 summoned second tame beasts and screamed that he was not leaving this place alive. Lei Yi smiled, waved casually, and told them to watch their backs. The mosquito was already moving. It hit the first tame beast from behind, sank its reinforced mouthpart through the armor, and flooded the creature with anesthetic. The Wolf King heard the movement drop and its opponents weaken, and it lunged without waiting. Together, the three-tailed fox, the mosquito, and Lei Yi's own hands dismantled 5 professionals in open terrain. By the time the last one went down, the dark-faced leader was on the ground, barely conscious, screaming threats about his organization, the Black Wolf Mercenary Corps. Lei Yi and Lin Qingshu exchanged a single look and reached the same conclusion simultaneously. There was no path forward that involved leaving witnesses, not with a mercenary corps named. He gave the order. The mosquito used fireball. The forest swallowed the evidence completely. Afterward, Lin Qingshu stood still for a moment, then turned to him with a look he had not quite seen from her before. She asked directly when he had become a warrior. He said he had trained in secret and never let it show. That keeping it hidden was the whole strategy. She said quietly that she finally understood everything, the mosquito, the secrecy, the choice. She had underestimated him, everyone had, and that, as she was beginning to see, was exactly what he had intended. She made a decision in that moment, standing in a forest that still smelled faintly of scorched grass. She was going to match his pace or exceed it. Falling behind was not something she would accept. She also told him, quietly, that if it ever came to it, she would be the one protecting him. A faint flush crossed her cheeks as she said it. Lei Yi missed it entirely. She noticed that he missed it and let out a small, quiet breath, partly relief and partly something she did not name. They moved together toward the next zone, neither of them acknowledging what had just shifted between them. The mosquito sent back a pulse through the mental link, 7 people ahead, 800 meters, moving in an unusual pattern. Lei Yi told Lin Qingshu they were being hunted by something interesting, and suggested they follow at distance. She pushed back immediately. Following another group in the wild was how people got killed. He laid out his reasoning. If a powerful demon beast was ahead, the group would draw its aggression first. The mosquito could feed during the fight, taking blood from a beast they could never safely confront head-on. The riskier the fight, the more severely wounded the beast, and the easier it became to slip a mosquito into the chaos. She listened and agreed. They fell into pace behind the group a safe distance. When the clothing and markers came into view, both of them stopped. Han Clan. Lei Yi's jaw set. It was Han Chen's people who had sent those 3 to his dormitory the night before. That debt had not been forgotten, and this was not a coincidence he was going to let pass unused. Lin Qingshu said nothing. She had no fondness for the Han clan and no intention of intervening on their behalf. They tracked the group carefully, staying behind the detection range of the Han clan's beast. One member was level 40, that changed the shape of every scenario significantly. Lei Yi told Lin Qingshu they were watching only. No engagement unless they were certain of the outcome. She agreed and held him to it, out loud, directly, by name. They followed for over an hour before the group suddenly accelerated, tracking footprints and disturbed earth. Then the earth shook. A howl tore through the forest so deep and wide it scattered birds from every tree. Within half a kilometer, the pressure wave hit both of them in the chest, stirring blood and Kai simultaneously. They looked at each other. Whatever was ahead was not something ordinary. Lei Yi processed the evidence quickly. Wolf howl, but incomprehensibly powerful. Something giving birth nearby. He said it aloud. The Wolf King was giving birth, and the Han clan was here for the pups. Lin Qingshu made the connection immediately. Han Chen was approaching level 20, nearly ready to contract a second tame beast, contracting through a bond, rather than summoning aloud a tamer to choose their beast species directly. Han Chen's first beast was wolf type. A Wolf King pup would amplify every advantage he already had. The mosquito flew ahead and returned with detailed reconnaissance. A winged Wolf King, Pikateer, had just given birth deep in a cave ahead, to pups, eyes closed, impossibly small, with tiny folded wings on their backs. Lin Qingshu's expression changed. She told Lei Yi that among all tame beast traits, the rarest and most prized was the ability to fly. A flying a ranked beast with peak combat power was the kind of asset clans went to war over. She asked, very carefully, whether there was any chance they could take the pups for themselves. Lei Yi smiled and said it was worth finding out. They settled into a concealed position and watched the Han clan make their move. The group had prepared specifically for this encounter. A defense-type turtle beast as bait and shield, a hawk for aerial control, multiple attack-type beasts in coordination. They had done their homework. They understood the Wolf King's weaknesses and had brought exactly the tools to exploit them. The winged Wolf King burst out of the cave in a fury, ferocious and terrifyingly fast, but its body was still weakened from the birth. The fight that followed was enormous, the Wolf King moving like a contained storm. The Han clan tamed beasts taking hits and pressing from multiple angles. While the chaos raged in open ground, Lei Yi sent the mosquito into the cave through the back entrance. It found the two pups sleeping peacefully in the dark, completely unaware of the battle at the mouth of their den. He gave the order carefully, draw just a little blood, enough to gauge what was there. Not enough to harm them. The mosquito aligned with a vein on the first pup's neck, vitality, +2, from a newborn. At that tiny draw, these were exceptional creatures. Even their blood at birth carried something extraordinary. He pulled the mosquito back and let it begin digesting while he focused on the battle outside. The Wolf King was powerful, but the Han clan setup was working. It was being ground down by attrition. Lin Qingshu watched with growing tension, asking if they should intervene to save the Wolf King now. Lei Yi told her to wait. He was certain the Wolf King had not used its final weapon yet. She held back, trusting him, watching the Wolf King take 3 more wounds in quick succession. Then the Wolf King opened its jaw fully and unleashed. A torrent of wind blades tore outward from its mouth in a radial burst at point-blank range. Every tame beast locked in close combat was struck simultaneously. Several sustained severe wounds and collapsed. The Han clan scrambled. The spider-tamed beast began firing silk in thick ropes, wrapping the exhausted Wolf King until it could barely move. The hawk dove from above, talons aimed at the Wolf King's skull, a killing strike, precisely timed. The Wolf King twisted its neck with the last of its speed and clamped down on the hawk's talons. 3 seconds. The hawk was dead, but the silk had already landed. The winged Wolf King was wrapped, grounded, bleeding, burning through the last of its strength. The Han clan's leader gave the order for full assault. This was the moment they had planned for. He did not notice the mosquito closing in from behind. It drove into the back of his neck. Anesthetic flooded through him in a single injection. His arm refused to rise. His voice refused to come. His tame beast's commands died in his paralyzed throat. The mosquito pivoted and found the spider, still straining at its silk threads. Oblivious to the approach, it drove in, anesthetic delivered. The spider went slack. Without the spider's restraint, the Wolf King tore free and the battle completely reversed. The Han clan tamers turned and found their leader motionless. They started shouting for explanations. The mosquito answered by injecting the next nearest face and detonating a small fireball directly on it. The man dropped with a look of complete bewilderment still frozen on his expression. Panic broke through the Han clan's coordination. Tame beasts were recalled for defense. Attention scattered. The Wolf King, sensing the pressure lift, stopped trying to escape and simply started killing everything it could reach. Then Lin Qingshu and Lei Yi stepped out of the trees. 3 fireballs and 3 wind blades from the 3-tailed fox hammered into the group. From the front, the mosquito worked the flanks, anesthetizing beasts as fast as it could reach them, feeding them to the Wolf King's jaws. The Han clan tamers, trapped between a freed Wolf King and 2 invisible attackers, were completely overwhelmed. Someone recognized the 3-tailed fox, the Lin clan. Lin Qingshu was here. Why was the Lin clan attacking the Han clan? The thought that this was a declaration of war sent genuine terror through the group. The Lin clan was the stronger presence in Haichen. If they had turned hostile, running was the only option. Lei Yi had already sent the mosquito ahead into the forest to cut off the retreat. He moved from behind a tree line with a kick that launched the first man into the air. He hit the nearest tame beast with a follow-up punch and felt his arm go numb. The defense was too strong to break through cleanly. He pulled back into the trees. One of them called out that they had seen his face, and the Han clan would hunt him for this. The threat ended mid-sentence. The mosquito had already reached him from behind. Once every last member of the group had been dealt with, Lei Yi gave the same order he had given before. No evidence. The forest absorbed it all. Without tamers directing them, the Han clan's remaining beasts fought without coordination, and the Wolf King destroyed them, one by one. Then, finally, the winged Wolf King swayed and sank. It had reached the absolute end of its strength. Every wound from the long battle had taken everything that was left. It looked up at Lei Yi and Lin Qingshu as they stepped carefully into the open. Neither of them moved closer. A dying Wolf King could still kill both of them in a single reflex. But the Wolf King's eyes were not threatening. They were asking something. Lei Yi understood. He spoke quietly to it, told it not to worry, that they would take care of the pups. Only then did the Wolf King lower its head and slowly close its eyes. It had chosen to trust only the people who had chosen to help it, when it had no leverage left to offer. Lei Yi had the mosquito confirm the Wolf King had stopped breathing, before he relaxed a single degree. Then he sent it into feed, a level 40 boss-tier creature. The vitality return per draw was 4 times what the pups had yielded. The bloodline rank was extraordinary. This single feeding session might trigger a full level jump in the mosquito. He told Lin Qingshu they needed to get the pups out quickly. She barely contained herself, to winged Wolf King pups, to a rank flying beast, ready to be contracted and raised. She was already thinking about what this would mean for her clan when Lei Yi told her the pups were hers. He wanted the Wolf King's body. That was the trade he was proposing. She refused immediately. He had done the work. Everything should go to him. He pushed back. They were a team. Everything split evenly, or she did not consider him a friend. She thought for a moment, then removed her storage bracelet and placed it directly in his hands. If they were splitting evenly, she said, the winged Wolf King pups were already far more than her fair share. Everything in the bracelet was his. The pups went to the Lin clan. The balance was more than settled. Lei Yi looked at the bracelet, worth a fortune on its own, and then at the pile of goods inside it. He was not the type to be awkward about resources he genuinely needed. He accepted without false protest. They carried the pups out of the cave, small and warm and completely untroubled by anything that had happened around them. The 2 of them made their way back to the city as the light began to change, going their separate ways at the edge of town. Lei Yi went directly to the Adventurers Guild with every sellable item from the day's hunt. The selling counter was staffed by a sharp-eyed female employee, who greeted him with professional warmth. He produced 2 unicorn wild boars in perfect condition and set them on the floor. The employee quoted 9,500 without hesitation and began reaching for his account information. He told her to hold on. There was more. She looked at the available floor space and told him politely there was more than enough room. Someone nearby submitting a completed mission laughed out loud, clearly showing off for the staff's attention. Lei Yi paid no attention. He began pulling out rain chime frogs. They piled onto the floor in a small mountain, then kept coming, filling every inch of open space from counter to wall. 100 and more, all in strong condition. Every head neatly split and crystal cores already extracted. The entire room went quiet. The employee's hand was still frozen mid-reach for the account form. Her mouth was slightly open. The man who had laughed was now staring at the floor with color draining from his face. Voices broke out across the room in overlapping waves. Level 10 rain chime frogs. Group dwelling species, this many cleared at once. Who was this person? Which team did he belong to? Why no identifying marker? 3 people quietly started calculating whether the group might be taking new members. The female employee pulled herself together and called for additional staff. No single person could process this volume. Several male employees came over and stopped in their tracks as well. This rivaled a week's worth of the guild's normal intake. Lei Yi sat down in the chair someone brought him, sipped the tea someone else brought, and told them to take their time. The guild manager arrived with a faint sweat on his forehead and introduced himself, Li Chong, manager of the Hai Chen branch. He extended his hand with the particular warmth reserved for clients who had just restructured his quarterly projections. Lei Yi introduced himself as a student at Hai Chen High School and let the man's surprise settle quietly. Li Chong produced a gold member card before the counting was halfway finished. 10% premium on all goods sold, 10% discount on all purchases, effective immediately and retroactively from today's transaction. Lei Yi accepted without ceremony. He asked directly whether that rate applied to everything in the room right now. Li Chong said of course, and meant it. Clients with this kind of output were to be retained at any reasonable cost. They made small talk while the counters worked. Li Chong probed gently for background information. Lei Yi revealed nothing useful and did it pleasantly. Li Chong left the conversation more convinced than ever that this young man was the front for something large. He resolved privately to treat him better than he treated actual powerful clan clients. Then Lei Yi waved his hand and a second pile of rain chime frogs materialized on the floor. It was larger than the first. Every person remaining in the room lost their composure completely. The first pile had not been the full count. It had not even been half. Exclamations broke out in every corner. Calculations were rapidly revised. A sharp-eyed onlooker noticed that every skull had been split and the crystal cores removed before sale. The conclusion formed quickly and spread through the room. Whoever this was had hunted specifically for water element cores. Rain chime frogs were low tier, but water element. The crystal core yield per frog was small, but the volume made it significant. That meant there was a tamed beast being developed specifically toward water element evolution, which meant a very large and very serious team backing this student, far out of proportion to his apparent age and rank. The respectful glances multiplied. Li Chong's smile became substantially wider. On the far side of the room, a door opened and Han Chen walked in. He had his own goods to sell from the day's hunt, some decent returns. A small crowd of followers saying the right things about his tame beast's power. He walked in expecting to be the most interesting thing in the room. He was not even close. Everyone was facing the counter, and at the center of their attention was someone he recognized immediately. Lei Yi, sitting in a guild chair, sipping tea, while 2 mountains of rain chime frogs were being counted around him. Han Chen's expression went very still. Lu Yan, standing at his side, felt her stomach drop. She had ended things with Lei Yi specifically because she believed he had no future. She had chosen Han Chen because she believed his path was clearly upward. The scene in front of her was not cooperating with that narrative. Han Chen assembled the only explanation that made any sense to him. Lei Yi was fronting for someone else's team. He was too weak to hunt rain chime frogs at this scale, too poor to hire a team capable of it. The only remaining explanation was that he had stolen these goods somehow. Han Chen moved toward the counter, followers in tow, certain that once he exposed the theft, the spotlight would return where it belonged. Lei Yi noticed him coming across the room and simply continued his conversation with Li Chong. He did not adjust his expression. He did not straighten in the chair. He had not given Han Chen enough thought during the day's work to feel anything urgent about seeing him now. Han Chen reached the edge of the crowd and started voicing his suspicion aloud, loudly enough to carry. He was convinced Lei Yi had stolen every last one of these rain chime frogs. A waste who had contracted a mosquito could not have hunted this many. The math was impossible. His family was too poor for hired teams. He had no connections. Theft was the only conclusion, and he was about to say so directly in front of the guild manager, in front of everyone. The followers rippled with anticipation. They had seen Han Chen dismantle people socially before. Lu Yan stood at his side and waited for the moment to arrive. But the moment did not arrive in the shape anyone expected. Li Chong turned from his conversation with Lei Yi and looked at Han Chen, with a particular expression guild managers reserved for people who were not clients. He asked pleasantly if there was something he could help with. Han Chen realized he had read the room incorrectly. The guild manager was not standing beside Lei Yi as a neutral party managing a transaction. He was standing beside him as someone who had already made a judgment about which of these two people deserved his time. The gold member card was visible in Lei Yi's hand. The floor was still covered in sorted, professionally assessed rain chime frogs being counted toward what was going to be an extraordinary final figure. The accusation Han-Chen had prepared died somewhere before it reached his mouth. He sold his own goods in a different corner and left sooner than he had planned. Lu Yan walked beside him in silence. Neither of them said what they were thinking for the entire walk back. At the counter, the final count came in. The total transaction, rain chime frogs, unicorn wild boars, assorted goods, was substantial by any standard. The gold member bonus pushed it further. Lei Yi walked out of the Adventurers Guild with more resources than he had held at any point in his life, enough to fund the next phase of the mosquito's development with real room to accelerate. He kept the higher-level beast carcasses from the Wolf King and from the day's deeper hunts. Those were not for selling. Those were for feeding. Back in the dormitory, he checked the mosquito's current status after the Wolf King absorption had finished processing. The numbers had moved significantly. The divine beast bloodline purity from sustained feeding was accumulating. The skill pool was deep now: paralysis, prey detection, bewilderment, fireball, wind blade, water affinity, sprint, turtle shell defense, and more coming. And each skill was growing, not static, leveling alongside the mosquito as its rank climbed. He thought about the three young men on the rooftop, still walking around school in the belief that they had a score to settle privately. He thought about Han-Chen, who was building something carefully, with clan resources and well-arranged future contracts. He thought about the school leadership, currently investing everything in a girl named Binger who was being quietly moved to Haichen for her own protection. And he thought about Lin Qingshu, who had said she would protect him if it came to it, and who had meant it. Every one of these threads was moving at once, and he was at the center of all of them without any of them fully understanding what they were dealing with. The mosquito sat on his shoulder, considerably larger than it had been 2 days ago, the metallic gleam on its mouth catching the dormitory light. It had started the week as the object of everyone's laughter. It had ended the day having absorbed the blood of an rank 3-tailed fox, 3-level when he tamed beasts, over 100 water element demon beasts, a winged wolf king, and its own newborn pups. Every one of those absorptions had left its mark, pushed its rank forward, thickened its bloodline, expanded its skill pool, and through all of it, every drop had fed back into Lei Yi, skills, attributes, bloodline traces, physical reinforcement. He was no longer the same person who had walked up to the summoning platform. He was not yet what he intended to become, but the gap was closing faster than anyone who had written him off that morning could possibly have calculated. The path ahead was still long. The Wolf King's blood was only the beginning of what he needed. Higher beasts, rarer bloodlines, deeper evolution. The mosquito ceiling was unlimited, and he intended to find out what that word actually meant. The 3-tailed fox was on its way toward its first evolution, driven by the crystal cores they had collected and the strategy he had provided. When it evolved, the skills available to absorb from it would grow alongside its new form. The feedback loop was self-reinforcing. The stronger Lin Qingshu's beast became, the stronger his mosquito could grow, and the stronger he would become in turn. He had come into this week with no money, no resources, no faction support, and a tame beast that looked like a joke. He was leaving the week with Guild Gold member status, a storage bracelet full of valuable goods, one of the rarest flying beasts blood absorbed, and a partner who had told the Han clan's hunting party that the Lin clan was their enemy. He had not planned for all of that. Some of it had come from reading situations correctly and moving at exactly the right moment, but most of it had come from the choice he had made when he walked past the S-rank beasts and stopped in front of a mosquito. That choice had looked like madness from every angle except one, the angle that could see the ceiling. He lay back on the dormitory bed with the mosquito resting on the edge of the pillow, its wings folded, its body still faintly warm from the Wolf King's blood. He thought about what came next. The Bee Clan's daughter would be arriving soon, drawing powerful enemies toward Haichen High School like a signal fire in the dark. The joint examinations were on the horizon, with every school in the region competing for rank and funding. Han-Chen's second beast contract was approaching, and with a winged Wolf King pup now in the Lin clan's possession rather than his, the plan his family had arranged was already disrupted. None of these things frightened him. They were timelines, obstacles. variables, all of them manageable if he kept growing faster than anyone expected. The key was exactly what it had been from the beginning. Stay invisible, stay moving, feed the mosquito everything available. Let people assume he was finished. Let them invest their energy in watching him fail. Every hour they spent dismissing him was an hour he spent becoming something they had no category for. The three bullies on the rooftop had called him a waste and walked away with drained beasts, and no memory of how badly the night had gone for them. The mercenaries in the forest had called him a student and paid for the assumption. With everything they had, the Han clan's hunting party had come prepared for a wolf king and left as evidence of a fire. The pattern was consistent. People who looked at Lei Yi saw the mosquito, and the mosquito looked like nothing. That was the whole architecture. That was what he had built in 48 hours without a single coin of school funding, without a single clan connection, without a single ally who knew his full strategy. He closed his eyes and listened to the dormitory settle into silence around him. The mosquito's wings shifted slightly against the pillow. Something in his movement suggested it was also still digesting, still processing, still growing even while he rested. That, he thought, was an appropriate summary of what they were doing together. Even stillness was progress now. 2 days. That was all it had taken to go from the lowest point of his public life to a foundation that would eventually be impossible to ignore. The principal had declared the school would invest nothing in him. Li Chong at the Adventurers Guild had given him a gold member card. His classmates had whispered that the breakup had broken him. Lin Qingshu had said she would be the one protecting him if it came to it. Han Chen had told Liu Yan that he must have been blind to ever notice Lei Yi. Soon enough, Han Chen was going to wish he were still blind. The world had decided Lei Yi was finished, and he had let it decide that, because a wrong assumption held by the right people was worth more than any resource. The blood-craving demon mage had started life as the lowest-ranked creature on a summoning platform, so unimpressive that a crowd of observers had laughed outright at the choice. Now it carried the bloodline trace of a divine beast, the absorbed skills of a wolf king, and the feeding history of over 100 different sources of blood. Its talent ceiling was listed as unlimited, and it had not yet encountered a single creature powerful enough to show it the meaning of that word. Lei Yi had not yet encountered a single obstacle powerful enough to show him the limit of what he was building. Every faction that looked at Haichan High School's class this year saw a disappointing cohort. No S-rank contractors except the incoming Binger, and a rank student with uncertain evolution prospects, and a boy who had chosen a mosquito and been publicly written off. They were watching the wrong person and asking the wrong question. The question was not which tame beast a tamer had contracted. The question was whether that tame beast had a ceiling, and no one except Lei Yi knew the answer. He would not reveal it until he was strong enough that revealing it changed nothing, until the gap between where he was and where his enemy stood was wide enough. That exposure could not cost him what he had built. That day was not today, but it was coming, and it was coming faster than any of the people laughing at the mosquito choice had factored into their calculations. The winged wolf king had trusted to strangers with its children in the last minutes of its life. It had made that choice because it understood, in whatever way powerful creatures understand such things, that these two were different from the ones who had come to take from it. Lei Yi thought about that for a moment. He had not expected to feel anything about a dying wolf king. He had felt something anyway. There was a version of power that took everything from whatever it touched, left nothing standing, and called that strength. The Han clan's team had gone into the forest with that kind of power. They had brought overwhelming numbers, perfect preparation, and specific tools for exploitation. They had come away as evidence that fire destroyed completely. Lei Yi was building something different, a path that did not require factions, did not require exploitation of allies, did not require showing his hand before the moment was exactly right. It was slower to start. It demanded patience that most people his age would not survive applying. But the returns were compounding, and compounding interest, given enough time and the right starting conditions, became something unstoppable. The blood-craving demon mage was the starting condition. The unlimited ceiling was the time horizon. Everything else, the alliances forming quietly with Lin Qingshu, the guild relationship already providing infrastructure, the reputation currently sitting at absolute zero, was material to work with. He had chosen well. He had chosen exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment, in front of exactly the right audience to ensure they would not see what he was doing, until it was too late to stop. Lin Qingshu had told him she trusted him. She had meant it as a statement about his judgment. He understood it as something with weight and consequence. Trust given freely by someone who did not give it easily was a resource more valuable than crystal cores. He intended to justify it, not through sentiment, but through continued results that made the trust self-evidently correct. The three-tailed fox would evolve. When it did, the skills available to the mosquito would expand again, and the feedback loop would accelerate again, and the gap between Lei Yi and every person who had laughed at the ceremony platform would widen again. And then Bingo would arrive, carrying an ice phoenix with 7% divine beast bloodline purity, drawing the attention of every powerful enemy her clan had ever made. That was a problem for the school. It was also an opportunity for someone positioned carefully enough to benefit from chaos without being consumed by it. Lei Yi did not know yet exactly how that opportunity would present itself, but he had learned in the past 48 hours that the right preparation made every opportunity larger than it first appeared. The dormitory was completely quiet now. Every student on the floor was asleep or pretending to be. Somewhere across the school, Han Chen was probably still fuming. Lu Yan was probably still silent. The principal was probably still satisfied with the arrangement he had made regarding Binger, certain it solved the most urgent problem. None of them were thinking about the student in dormitory with the mosquito for a tame beast. That was exactly right. That was precisely as it should be. Lei Yi had not needed their attention. He had needed their dismissal, and they had given it to him completely and without reservation. Now he needed time, and he was going to take every hour they were not watching and build something with it. In the morning, there would be more targets. The mosquito would feed again. The divine beast bloodline purity would rise again, and the skill pool would deepen again, and his own attributes would expand again. Every cycle added to the previous one. Every day compounded the days before. Eventually, someone would notice. Eventually, the results would become impossible to hide. He was not afraid of that moment. He was preparing for it. The difference between now and then was simply how much he had built between the 2 points. The more completely everyone ignored him in the intervening time, the larger the difference would be. He had walked past the S-rank tame beasts and chosen a mosquito, and the world had responded by leaving him alone. That was the greatest gift they could have given him, and they had no idea they were giving it. He had accepted it, and he was going to use every moment of it. Outside, the city of Haichen settled into its nighttime pace, lights dimming in the training halls, guards rotating at the major clan gates. Somewhere in transit, Bingo was moving toward the city with an ice phoenix and a target on her back. Somewhere in the forest, the ash of what had once been a mercenary ambush and a Han clan hunting party was cooling in the dark. Somewhere in the Lin clan compound, the winged wolf king pups were sleeping in a warm enclosure, surrounded by people who did not yet understand what they had been given. And in a dormitory room, a student who had been declared worthless by his school's principal, abandoned by his girlfriend, mocked by his peers, and underestimated by every person who had seen the ceremony, was lying quietly in the dark. The mosquito rested beside him, warm and growing, carrying inside its small body the blood of creatures far beyond what anyone would expect it to have encountered in 2 days. Tomorrow it would feed again, the day after, again. Every powerful beast in the region was, in some sense, already contributing to what Lei Yi was becoming, whether they knew it or not, whether they survived the meeting or not. He opened his eyes once more and looked at the ceiling in the dark. The talent appraisal system was quiet now, no new information coming in, no evaluation panels open. It had shown him the one thing he needed to see, at the exact moment he needed to see it, and the rest was on him. He had seen it clearly. He had acted on it without hesitation, and now the consequences were already in motion, spreading outward from that single moment of decision in ways that would take months to fully understand. The principal's teacup was broken. The Han clan had lost a hunting party and a carefully planned contract. 3 bullies were walking around school with secretly drained tame beasts, and no way to explain why. Lin Qingshu was working harder than she had ever worked, driven by a resolution she had made in a forest after watching him fight. All of this had come from one choice, made while everyone was watching, understood by no one except the person making it. That was how it was going to continue. Every next choice made in plain sight, visible to everyone, understood by no one until it was already done. The mosquito's wings adjusted once against the pillow. Lei Yi closed his eyes. The path he had chosen did not have a ceiling, and that was the only thing that mattered. He had looked at the S-rank beasts and seen their limits clearly: sacred rank, formidable, finite. He had looked at the mosquito and seen something that had never been mapped, never been tested, never been taken to its actual boundary. Most people, given that information, would have been afraid of the uncertainty. Lei Yi had seen it as the only reasonable answer to the question. Why settle for a ceiling when you could choose a sky with no visible end? Sacred rank tamers guarded entire regions, powerful, celebrated, enough for almost anyone. But almost anyone was not the standard he was measuring himself against. Divine rank tamers existed only in legend, no confirmed appearance in recorded history. That was the standard, and the mosquito was the only road that led there. It was going to be a long road, longer than any path that started with an S-rank beast and a full scholarship. It was going to be harder, stranger, and more dangerous than anything a conventional path offered, but it was going to be entirely his own. No faction pulling his direction, no powerful clan deciding who he could and could not become, no ceiling installed by someone else's assessment of what was appropriate for a boy from a poor family in Haichen. Just the blood-craving demon mage absorbing what it encountered, feeding back what it learned, and growing toward something no one had a name for yet. And alongside it, Lei Yi, tamer, warrior, scout, strategist, becoming whatever that something required of him. He had started with nothing except the ability to see what everyone else was missing. He intended to finish with everything that mattered. The city was quiet. The dormitory was quiet. The mosquito was quiet. Somewhere in his attribute panel, the numbers from the Wolf King's blood were still settling into place, rounding out the edges of skills that would be sharper by morning. He did not need to check them again tonight. They would be there when he woke. They would always be there, growing, accumulating, compounding forward through every fight and every feeding and every morning. That came after a night spent building in the dark. The world had decided what Lei Yi was on the day of the ceremony. It had decided loudly, publicly, and with complete confidence. It had been wrong in every particular, and it would not know that until the day he chose to show it. That day was not today. Today was for resting, for digesting, for letting the Wolf King's blood finish writing itself into the mosquito's body. Tomorrow was for feeding again, and the day after, and every day after that, quiet and accumulating and invisible, until the moment came when invisible was no longer an option, when the gap was wide enough, and the foundation solid enough, and the power real enough that the world would have to look directly at what it had laughed at and finally understand what it had seen. Lei Yi had chosen the mosquito, and the mosquito had chosen to be limitless. That was enough.